The title Rah Rah World was inspired by myself. I wanted it to be more oriented around me, whereas the last project was a little more oriented around the feelings I had for someone else. The origin of the cover art in general was a more deceptive feeling. You know, like love in general, I think is relatively deceptive. Maybe not all the time, but it might seem like it's good for you. It might really actually hurt. You know, it's almost like an illusion. I wanted it to portray a hallucination, even in the video Aura when I'm running in the snow, like away from Cupid or whatever. And then I get shot and the sky lights up. I wanted to depict basically a hallucination. Hey, MTV News, it's Mariah the Scientist, and these are my top 5 musical influences. My first musical influence in general, I would say, is poetry. And that sounds kind of corny, but I think that before I was making full blown songs, I was just describing how I felt about certain situations, you know, and just it happened to be rhyming. And then eventually I made music out of it. So I'd say that was the first one. My second top musical influence, I would say, is Frank Ocean. A lot of the times I don't know exactly what he's talking about, but his diction is so intricate that I'm just always intrigued and captivated by it in general, and I just like the way he puts it together. The main similarity between Frank and I would be that it can get really metaphorical. I love being able to get metaphorical, and it doesn't always come that simply, but like the best songs I think are more of a metaphor than they are, you know, than like literal. I just always like that about him because I feel that it's open to interpretation. You know, like a lot of times, like I go read feedback on my music and they'll be saying that it's like all these other things that it does not mean. But it's like, I'm like, damn, that's fine. I'm gonna tell somebody that it is what it is, even though it's really not that at all. Honestly, the breakdowns get so detailed and just outlandish. It's absurd, but it's cool. But that's because a lot of it is open to interpretation. It's very much metaphorical, and I like that a lot. My third top musical influence is probably Lauryn Hill. And I say that because half the time she's singing and half the time maybe it's considered rap. I don't really know, but it's just like she just flows through these mediums. There's no real like name for it, you know, and I just like that. It's just more like a flow than, you know, one specific category. And that's also another reason why I don't like the idea of a genre. I don't like when people ask me things like specifically referring to R&B, because it's just like, who's to say that's R&B? You know, who's to say that it's R&B? It's just music. If I had to describe my music or my writing style in general, I would say it was a bit freeform. And in the beginning, it was more like just very many run-on sentences. There was no real hook. There was no real structure. And over time, as I've evolved, you know, I've learned more about the traditional structure of a song. But if I had to describe it in general, I would say maybe a little unconventional or alternative. I think the next musical influence of mine, which I have developed more recently, is probably Pink Floyd, and the fact that the majority of it is, I don't even want to say the majority, all of it is very instrumentally oriented. You know, it's just like sounds. Their world revolves around sound in general. And maybe it's not necessarily an instrument, but there are different sounds. And the first time I heard it, it made me really anxious, you know, just the different things they implemented. And then eventually I grew to really love it, especially Any Color You Like that song in general is probably my favorite song by them. And it just makes me feel so many different emotions. It's just electrifying. I don't know. That's just the truth though. I don't even know how else I can describe it. The sounds in general. I think my last top musical influence would be my father. He doesn't make music or anything like that, but when I was growing up, he was practically the only outlet to find and listen to music, you know, that I had. My mom wasn't really the type to listen to music unless it was like on the radio, but he was more diverse and, you know, would listen to, you know, very many things. And when I first told him I was going to make music, he was not a fan of that idea, but I think it's grown on him, I guess. I've grown a lot since Master. I think I've had so many more personal experiences that have just opened my eyes to so many things and have helped me perceive things differently. And my perception has changed. If there's one thing I want people to know about me from Rah Rah World is the fact that I just have multiple layers and there's so many different facets. Like in the first song, I show a lot of, gratification towards some personal experience I have. And then when she make it to the last song, it's a little more spiteful. And I feel like there are many different layers in between.